Hello and welcome to Top Secret TV. My name's David Becker. With me in the studio tonight are Mark and Carla.
Hi, Dave.
Usual special news people. And of course our special guest is Simon Trezellian. Welcome, Simon.
Hi.
How are you?
Very well indeed, thank
That's
you.
good, thanks. Simon's out here, I understand you're out here doing a series of lectures for Nexus magazine?
That's right, I've just come down from Hong Kong just to fit in the Nexus conference, and I'll be flying back to England in a couple of days' time.
Right, can you tell us a little bit about what you're telling people about in your lectures?
What I'm actually doing this time around is actually giving people an indication not only of really where they come from, but almost like where they're going to as well. We're talking a lot about some of the institutions that are constantly threatening to sort of take away freedom of choice within our society. And I'm giving a lot of information that's been found in ancient texts and also more modern versions as well of things like the Vatican and some of the secret agendas from there on, and also talking about the New World Order, man's change as he goes into the next millennium, and also the importance of Australia as regards to mankind's evolution for the coming millennium.
Just recently we did a bit of a roundtable discussion about conspiracies, and I sort of maintained the position that while there's a huge amount of circumstantial evidence to suggest that some powerful people are manipulating the world, I saw no obvious right up there in my face evidence to prove that it's happening. Can you perhaps give us a bit of an insight into some of the conspiracies and maybe a little bit of evidence as to...
Well, I feel that common sense will prevail, and you can actually see the various different restrictions of freedoms coming through as time goes on. There is definitely a manipulation towards some of the bigger financial institutions and the bigger industrials. For instance, the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, why a pharmaceutical industry which makes its profit from people getting ill, why would they want you really, logically, to get better? There is certainly a big push towards major shareholders as opposed to individual nations now. And when we're starting to look at the world in general, there is a major push towards major trading blocks like the EC, like the Americas, like the Australasias. So I feel that we are running up towards, inevitably, towards, unless it is actually stopped, a one world government, a one world order, a one world army, and of course that will be then run by a chosen elite.
Now, would that be actually the goal of being some sort of power block where the chosen elite runs the world, or is it just logically that's the way it goes from an economic perspective?
From an economic perspective, of course, it is. From a spiritual perspective and an emotional perspective for human beings, then really that's not the way that people want to go. People want to have that individual freedom of choice, to be able to worship in their own way, to be able to do the things that they want to do, without having their children microchipped or, told what seeds they can buy as farmers, or what goods you can buy or purchase or not. So I feel that really it's very important for us to actually maintain these levels of privacy, these levels of freedom of choice.
It's funny how I think a lot of the conspiratorialists, we ask who, why, where, when, what was the person up to. And we talk about the pharmaceuticals, and how many times are we going to talk about the pharmaceutical people without actually naming the companies? Are you in your lectures actually naming individual companies which you may feel are a part of this conspiracy? Because I just feel that we could be here in another 3 years sitting down interviewing someone, not to have a go at you at all, and I believe we could talk about the same thing again without ever covering the topic of who within the pharmaceutical industry is a part of the conspiracy.
Well, I think it's a very general thing. I mean, certainly the World Bank and a lot of people have been doing things about the Bilderberg Group, the Council for Foreign Relations, trilateral committees and things like this. I mean, that is the subject of many conspiratorial discussions. And I think the names are now very much on record for people to see, and very many of the books are around. My focus this time is not actually to start accusing people or accusing organisations, but to give a broad overview of the type of choices that mankind can have, and therefore, if people want to research that further, then they can do. It's not my object to actually scare people. It's my object really to show people what can be achieved by the nature of the human spirit, and to show us into a brave new world that we can all, hopefully see our children enjoying.
Because that's what I think a point you led to when we had that roundtable discussion on the conspiracy was that it's the fact you need a choice, and they're making us unaware of having the choice, and that's kind of where you're coming from. You want to give people the information to choose
Very
their
much so.
consciousness.
Yeah.
Do you believe that giving the information will, in this day and age, will the general person go out there and research, or do they have time to do that, or do they have the avenues to find out what you're suggesting? Because I noticed in the papers, say at World War II times, when the government may have radiation tested on their own people, and just recently in the media it's printed on paper, you see it in the newspapers, and nothing's spoken about again. I mean, there's a great cover-up, great conspiracy. Will the public do anything if they know anyway?
What we're seeing in the UK at the present time is that people are not just prepared to put up with what their local government tell them, and we're seeing a policy of direct action now. We saw this with the live veal exports and things like this. So people power is very, very important, providing the people are educated, providing the people are actually given the information. And that's all you need to do, is just give people the information. They'll make their own mind up. Don't tell them what to think, don't tell them what to do. Just allow them to have full expression, and they'll make their minds up from there on.
That's a very interesting point. You know, with some of the ancient sects or associations like the Masons, as I understand it, there's a mystic tradition where there's a certain level of knowledge that is for the general population, a certain level of knowledge which is for the initiates or the people within the fold, I guess you could say. Do you think that is still true today? Do you think that you know, there are levels of knowledge that certain people on planet Earth have that perhaps we're not ready for?
Oh, well, I feel that that's always been a case. I mean, you'll find that at every level of government, at every level, even within the local department store, there's going to be various different people on different levels of information and different levels of need to know. But I do believe that anything that affects humanity in general, like are there alien intelligences here on Earth or have been actually involved in the evolution chain, I feel that that is not just the domain of a very small minority of scientists and government officials. I believe that should be open house for the public. I mean, if they're genetically engineering us or whatever you know, we like to think that they're going to be doing, then we really do need to know. And, you know, I feel it's that it's appalling that people make decisions as to what people should know and not. It's almost like children.
Yeah, it's a value judgment sort of thing.
And I think we're all adults, we're all big enough to make our own minds up.
We're supposed to be, aren't we?
Well,
Yeah.
It's our
exactly
right to be scared, isn't it? That's the thing. I mean, we cannot act.
Well, I always say this thing about fear, because of course fear controls, and what we're actually seeing now is that you've been controlled very much so with the fear of the Warsaw Pact, you know, the fear of terrorism, and now very soon with the government disclosures on UFOs, we're going to have the fear of an outside agency coming through, and this is why they're going to be saying, we need you to spend your tax dollars so that we can actually protect you and your children from these races. I mean, and this is why you're seeing a lot of films now actually which are mostly sponsored by the people in the background to actually give you that fear. Independence Day was a conglomeration of this, where at some point in time when they do come out and say, well, actually Roswell was true, you know, we now know there are alien intelligences out there and they are a threat to you, because we haven't got a balance anymore on the terrestrial world. We can't threaten people with the Russians anymore, so we have to threaten them with something outside to maintain the defence industry, to maintain your tax dollars going in, to maintain that fear.
Which would also build a global system very
exactly
quickly,
right.
wouldn't it?
I mean, you'd need a one-world army at that point.
Are you suggesting that it's possible they might even stage such an invasion, like Project Bluebeam? I've heard the term banned.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence to suggest, what with Area 51, Dreamland, that there are these abilities now for people to actually manifest what would appear to be an alien invasion or attack. Now, if that's the case, then they're actually producing fear. But what I say in people is, well, fear is false evidence appearing real. and once you actually look at fear in that way, then you can actually see it for what it is, and then still make your own decision. But I feel, again, it's all about education of people.
Now, you're actually, apart from, of course, your series of lectures and so forth, you're in Australia for a reason, and part of that reason being is that Australia holds a sort of a, I don't know whether you call it a special place in the reasonably near future in terms of these things that we've been talking about.
This is my own theory. It's quite interesting. We're starting to see evidence. Even the scientific community is admitting now of the potentials for polar shifting. Now, this could be brought around by comets, which of course are now being all all the
You're
rage.
talking physical shift, not a magnetic shift.
No, I'm talking a physical shift. The ice blocks now are actually in the process of becoming very, very heavy, and it only needs something very minimal now to actually shift the pole on its axis. We were actually missed in 1986 by 6 hours by an asteroid, which in cosmic terms is not a lot. And consequently, now there are a number of asteroid films coming out. It's almost like they're actually making you believe or know that something is going to be happening. You're seeing a lot more of these disaster films. You've got Dante's Peak, you've got Volcano, we've now got the mini-series Asteroid, we've got Falling Fire coming from Warner Brothers, we've got Armageddon coming from Disney.
Was the next
believe,
step
you know?
beyond the alien invasion, wasn't it?
Well,
really?
exactly right. So when all these things start to actually manifest, things say, well, we've shown you this, we've told you this, and therefore people are almost expecting it. Now, I believe Australia is going to be very, very important as we go into the next millennium, because if we do start seeing major shifts, and of course all these have been said about in the Bible as well.
Yeah.
So prophecy actually is a warning. It's a warning to be prepared for something changing. And even the comets in the sky were looked upon by the old races as portents in the sky. You know, this is what's going to be happening.
Is it true to say that your focus in that preparation is the spiritual part of it, like
Very
revealing
much so.
the divinity within, for want of a better phrase?
I feel that we are not totally powerless in all this, and that we all in some way make our own reality. I mean, how many of us have had absolutely...
Oh, here we go.
Oh, right, yes,
Is
that's
it-
one of me, yes.
Yes, what are you doing there? You're,
Well, that's in the preparation for Firewalk. I actually do spiritual empowerment courses and corporate empowerment courses now as well, so people can actually find that true inner power and inner nature within. This was actually taken in Australia. This is quite a large fire we actually got, and we're just leaping through just to get used to the flames.
Now, how hot is that fire you were telling me?
Well, when it's all raked out, it's actually 1200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is interesting considering they cast Honda engines at 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's very, very hot indeed. But the fire is actually it's a reference, it's a metaphor for actually being able to actually conquer fear. That's not just the fear of fire, but that's the fear of anything. It's the fear of telling your partner that he's left the cap off the toothpaste 4 days on a row. It's the fear of actually going to the boss's office and saying, hey, come on, I want a raise. You know, all of us have these fears. All of us feel that we are powerless. And it's only when you actually seek within, that extra energy within, because we are all special. We all have that inner focus, that inner power. And once we can access that at will, then our life becomes that much easier in life. And that is our major focus on this.
That's with that major focus. Your actual methodology is one that you've borrowed from your professional career as an ex-member of the British Intelligence. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How you use the skills that you learnt there in a way to benefit humanity, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's actually almost quite a dichotomy, isn't it? Coming from this type of very grounded, very base level, all the way through to the very spiritual. But I find that nothing is wasted in life, whatever you are, whether you're a doctor, a scientist, a carpenter, or whatever. I believe that my aspect within British Special Forces was to take those qualities of determination, of courage, of the be able to conquer fear and actually still go on for that final mile, just when you really want to give up. It's that type of thing that you can then put into the spiritual context, so that you're not airy-fairy, you're not actually, you know, away with the celestials. You're actually coming back down to earth and allowing us to actually to see our spirituality being manifested here on earth. So I believe I'm being drawn into this world to actually allow people to see a very grounded approach to spirituality, to see that it's not just people with the gift, it's people that have all got this. Most of us would have had experience of deja vu, of animal magnetism, of being attracted to some people and being unattracted to some others, which have no logical reference whatsoever. Dreams, we all have dreams. Scientists have yet to explain how dreams work or record one. So I believe that mankind is almost like his brain, being that we only use 15% of it, is an organ in waiting. You know, if you believe science, just like the appendix, it's an organ that it's not used anymore. It used to be used for digesting grass. Now when they're inside, they'll just chop it out and take it away, throw it in a bin. I mean, that being the case, they should have taken your brain away by now.
Should have
But, you know,
atrophied. In my case, it has.
Well, in Darwin's theory, it would have atrophied. It wouldn't have got here if we didn't
exactly.
need it.
But I feel that the brain is an organ in waiting. We're starting to see now that areas of the brain are being accessed during different types of healing and different types of channeling. And I believe that mankind used to have all of these attributes: clairvoyance and remote viewing, as it's being called now. I believe that this was an absolute human function to be able to see where the herds were. It was a survival technique, so people could actually allow the tribe to move on. The Native Americans have been talking about this for a long, long time, being able to know where the buffalo went.
Is spirituality supposed to be a hard slog? Like, is it supposed to be like the march where the last mile you really don't want to do, but you do it anyway because...
No one said life had to be a struggle. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, we're given our mind, we're given our spirituality, but we're not given a manual to go with it. So very much is a case of trying to find it yourself. I don't believe it has to be a struggle. We tend to make life a struggle because we feel that if we're working hard, if we're chasing our own tails, then we're actually doing something. But in reality, it's interesting. I was reading recently in a book that the CEO of Nike, Philip Knight, spends the first hour of his morning in meditation, because he feels that he gets more out of his day by allowing that silence and allowing that inner peace to then produce sheer focus and sheer energy, rather than just getting on the phone and chasing your tail around.
Quality, not quantity.
Exactly right.
Well, it's worked for his company, hasn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
We just did it.
Within any of your lectures, do you touch on the religious conspiracy, as in the Christian one?
Certainly, I believe that mankind has been denied ancient knowledge for a long, long time. Certainly, I feel that it's not really of any surprise that the Vatican are heavily involved in this. The Vatican, of course, one of the world's wealthiest landowners, having more financial computers and analysts than Wall Street, and things like this. I mean, I believe, I'm not anti-religion at all, but what I do believe is that any religion that holds a spiritual sway over a fifth of the world's population should be answerable to that population. So when we're starting to see now archbishops, you've just actually got one indicted here in Australia, actually been done for fraud. And we've had all the things about the Catholic boys' homes, which have been covered up for 40 years. I mean, I believe that there needs to be some reference point to actually say, come on, let's get it right. Let's make you accountable for those people. You can't just cover up the finances. You can't just cover up the links with organised crime. You can't just cover up the problems with organised finances as well. There must be a point of time where religion, science, politics are actually answerable to the people that place them in that position of responsibility.
Because I think, not with picking on any church in particular, but I've read in some books that there were people of the Catholic Church which were actually in connection with Nazi Germany during the war, seeing that Italy was a part of the German war. You'd think that,
to safeguard
of course,
churches.
the spiritual basis of that country would prevail in the good of their country, which was the war, I suppose.
The Vatican arm has its own intelligence arm, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It actually has its own armed response group as well.
Armed response group?
Yes.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's actually part of the Holy Office, which
Love
is
thy
actually
neighbour.
the Holy Office of the Inquisition. The Inquisition was never actually, dissolved.
And of course, if everyone knows, nobody expects us.
Spanish Inquisition. I always check people for sandals, actually, just to make sure
I've
it's
got
not
mine
these,
on under my boots.
these Jesuit hit squads. The thing is that they wouldn't consider themselves as evil or negative. They're doing it. They're soldiers of Christ. They're soldiers of God, and if they can actually take out perceived threats, against the Vatican, then they will.
And so, would it be fair to say that the situation is a little bit thus? You've got a whole stack of different religious, economic, whatever groups, all competing with each other for pushing their own agendas, or is there a high level of cooperation?
Well, I feel that there is a pyramid structure, and of course, even though people are actually going to their own agenda, that can be manipulated by someone else above that.
Point, yeah.
So I don't believe, again, that the Freemasons are anything bad. They do a lot for the community. But of course, that can be manipulated by something above. You can manipulate the Marylebone Cricket Club, for God's sake. Anything can be manipulated if you have the focus and the intent to be able to do that. But I feel that at the end of the day, if you start to change the man in the mirror, start with yourself, start within that. A lot of people talk about these grey intelligence agents and all these conspirators and the Majestic 12 and all this stuff. At the end of the day, they're all people. People have aspirations, people have children. And I'm sure that intelligence operators, even like myself, love our children as much as the next person. We don't want to see our children microchipped or barcoded or, having implants in their brain and all this type of thing.
Never having seen a lion or something.
Yeah. So I believe that the spirit of man will prevail. We are going to a time now where the consciousness of individuals is growing amazingly. 70% of the population of the UK and a similar percentage in the United States are actively using complementary medicine, are actively using meditation as a tool, and vitamin supplements, all this type of thing, which 15 years ago was almost almost unheard of. So I believe in mankind. I believe in our own spirit to actually take us through. We see mankind doing awful things to mankind. You see it in Central Africa, in Bosnia, and things like this. But at the end of the day, you just look at figure skating, you just look at some of the art that we produce as well, and you actually see the beauty of man, and I believe that that's where we're going. And this is why I feel that Australia has so much to offer. Because in reality, you're a hybrid nation, as we know. You're almost like concocted, multi-racial, basically a country that has been put together that is almost going to be the blueprint for the world. Now, this is a blueprint for the world for the New World Order. This is why most of your financial things with swipe cards, smart cards, and the privacy things are actually being done here in Australia to see what the public reaction is. So they were way ahead in implants and all this type of thing.
Really?
Oh, very much so. But on the positive side, I mean, I believe that with the aspects coming through of potential polar shifting and the climate changes, I believe that a lot of it is going to happen around about a millennium. Now, A.T. Casey, Nostradamus, Fatima, Maliki, all of these people have said that there's going to be a major change in the world in the year 2000. And of course, what's happening here in the year 2000?
Yeah, I was just saying, is that the reason we got the Sydney Olympics?
Well, exactly, because if you look at one of the
planet swatting.
The maps from Scampion, you find that China is actually disappearing with the floods, the potential floods, and the Aborigines talk about this. They call it the seventh wave. But Australia is largely left intact because it's on its own tectonic plate right in the centre. Now, come the year 2000, you're going to see the largest migration of people ever in the world. Remembering now, there's more people that have lived in this century than have lived in all the other centuries put together. And they're all here right now.
And they're all going to be hungry.
And in 1996, in Atlanta, that was then the largest migration of people. In the year 2000, not only have you got the Olympics happening here, but you've also got the millennium. Now, just bear with me on this one. If you were a god, say you're a supernatural being, and you know that 80% of the world was going to die through cataclysm and cosmic change and planetary change, and you wanted almost like a Noah's Ark, what would you do? Not only in the year 2000 have you got the largest migration of people, but they're being represented by all races, by all cultures. And not only that, you're going to have the greatest physical specimens of all races and all cultures here in Australia in the year 2000.
And supposedly a great portion of supposedly great leaders and great minds and stuff, because a lot of them would come along to watch.
So if you really wanted to make almost like a natural Noah's Ark to actually take mankind into the next century, then as a god, it's a damn good place to start in Australia.
Do you intend to be here?
Yeah, I was about to say.
I actually, incidentally, I actually found my mother after 33 years. I was adopted at birth at 9 weeks old. And only to find that she runs a spiritual centre here in Australia. So I actually found her after 33 years. She's now my tour manager for Australia. So yes, I'm just about to marry an Australian girl as well.
There you go.
So yes,
Definitely standing in Australia.
Yeah,
We've got our hooks in you now.
exactly right.
You better learn to say mate and blood oath.
That g'day. Yeah.
We'll see you
So,
legging it up behind Linford's Christie.
Well, I've got the Akubra hat now as well. So,
you're right.
So that's all
You're
part and parcel of, isn't it, really? So I really do feel that, as I say, Australia has a lot to offer, not only myself on a personal level, but mankind on a very general level as well. And I feel it's going to be a very exciting, a very positive time for everybody, because this is the planet of choice. You know, and I say to people, be warned, you know, be prepared, and make that choice, and make it a positive choice.
For those of humanity who do make that choice, will there be any physical changes in their bodies? Like, for example, I've heard of a thing where we go to 3rd to 4th to 5th density, and you get lighter vibrations of matter.
Don't
and
need to
more
eat so
light
much
spills out,
and-
don't need to eat so much, and you're perfectly healthy and live for many
I feel that
thousands
that's
of
really
years.
going to be
Look young
happening.
Is
Yes,
it?
yeah.
You
Well,
really-
you're obviously working on it already. So. Yeah,
She's actually
63 years old.
What changes do you think, though?
Hundreds.
Are we just going to disappear and we're not going to exist, but we're going to exist on our planet?
Well, it's
Or
funny
are
that
we
the
gonna-
Mayans did.
Well, this is where
I
I'm
mean,
leaning
the
to.
Mayans, archaeologically speaking, disappeared over lunchtime. I mean, there's still like there are plates there. They didn't actually degenerate like a civilization normally goes to anarchy and then to barbarism and then to cannibalism and then falls down. I mean, the Mayans actually just disappeared like that. So.
Are there any bones left from the Mayan culture at all?
No, they actually just disappeared as a job lot.
Because this is what Carla and I have talked about. You imagine if the Mayans weren't of our own carbon structure. I know they may have in pictures appeared to be very
We
much
only look
like
for
a
bones,
normal-
don't we?
Well, I
human
think
being.
they were. I just think they were on again, a higher vibration. I mean, if you vibrate the molecules in this cup fast enough, it disappears. I mean, it actually burns up and changes. So I believe that we change in that way. We know that at the moment there's 7 chakras. We know that because there are 7 colours of the rainbow, 7 notes of the musical scale. And I feel that we'll start to see changes within the vibrationary scale of the rainbow, and this will give us an indication that something's happening within our body. Science has now recognised that the DNA structure of man is changing, but they can't tell you why it is, but they know that it's happening.
What part, I know this is an incredibly difficult question for you to answer, but what part do you think the Earth plays in the universal cosmology? Are we like, as above, so below? Are we like a metaphor for the battle between good and evil, and therefore we're incredibly important? Or
I'd like to think we're incredibly important, yeah. I believe that, yes, we are in the way of like the yin and the yang, the black and the white, night and day, that there is a sheer balance between that's almost like good and evil. And I feel that we represent that. If you actually look at half the face, you actually look at the right-hand side of the face, and it's a very evil picture of you. When you smile, it's almost like you're smirking. And when you look at the left-hand side of the face, it's almost like an angelic smile. And this is true for every single human being on the earth. So it actually does show an indication as well of our shadow self.
so it's fair to take an educated guess at that dichotomous nature that we're represented as is probably represented in the rest of the universe? Do you think that other sentient species have a good side and an evil side?
I honestly don't know, not having visited there.
Well answered.
But I would imagine that a lot of, I mean, there does seem to be a lot of UFO activity, most of which I think can be put down to of terrestrial origin. But with the amount of abduction stuff that's coming through now, with the amount of, I mean, even only one of them needs to be true for it to actually be proven. I feel that there is a lot of interest in mankind. You know, we are exuding something at the moment. I thought it was very interesting with the new Star Trek film, First Contact, where they talk about the warp drive giving off that bang, and then the aliens come. Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that the bang of the atomic bomb started all these alien things. We saw them before, I suppose, in
Like
the
a
murals.
signature event.
And then all of a sudden, after 1945, you get the Roswell crashes, and then all after that,
All
Project
these
Blue Book.
abductions.
I
it's
heard a
amazing.
different
Things like
scenario
this.
to the actual reason why you see so many UFOs now. At the Second World War, we developed the radar to a huge extreme. And in books I've read, people lead to the fact that they actually become visible because of the radar, and that certain crashes have been caused by radar, because we went from absolutely Zippo radar before the aeroplane, and then within the First World War, then into the Second World War, everything was done, well, not everything, but a lot of it was done through the air, and we needed to know what was out there. And we went from this quiet energy planet without all this radio frequency belting out, and then all of a sudden, there we
We've
go.
certainly come a lot noisier, haven't we?
Yeah, we're radiating everything now, aren't we?
But what about the greys or the abduction? It seems no matter where you go, in whatever country, there's a lot of talk about this.
True.
What is this? Some say it's an extraterrestrial type thing. Some say it's a government conspiracy. It's all staged by terrestrial people.
I think it's probably a bit of both, actually. I mean, I've certainly heard a lot of evidence indicating that the abductions are actually being set in very, very deep brainwashing techniques to allow people then to go forward with a very credible abduction story. And of course, this actually allows people to fear. They don't want to be abducted, of course they don't. And therefore, it only takes then a scientist to say, right, well, they're true, they're here, they're going to abduct you, but we can protect you.
And then suddenly everyone's afraid.
Exactly. But why then are there other abduction stories where people make these very benevolent aliens who show a very, very positive way of looking at the human race? So I feel that the abduction theory is actually true and it's there, but I feel that it's also being manipulated as well by people with a vested interest in actually creating fear, in human beings.
Okay, that's all we have time for. I'd like to thank Simon Trezellian. Thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you.
And of course, Carla and Mark,
Thanks,
our
Dave.
usual studio guests. That's all we have time for this week, so we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.